Today, we are launching a campaign called HeForShe. I am reaching out to you because we need your help. We want to end gender inequality. And to do this, we need everyone involved.
What is Impact 10 by 10 by 10? It's about engaging governments, businesses, and universities, and having them make concrete commitments to gender equality.
Hello everybody and welcome. Good afternoon Facebook fans. We are live from the Facebook offices in central London on International Women's Day.
It's got to be your story. It's got to be how you personally can make a difference. The smallest gesture goes such a long way.
We're putting the movement in your hands, turning to you to help us create a world in which gender is just a spectrum of beauty and not limitation.
And we're committed to increasing the representation of women all across the company, all across the globe, in both technology positions and also in leadership positions. Women actually not only contribute in terms of participating in the labor force, they drive entrepreneurship.
You know, you can't really find peace in the world if 50% of the world is women and they're not included in the same conversation.
It's actually my letter to her. So, HeForShe.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yo, it's Lynn, and I have to laugh. How can we not be equal? We're like half. Like, women are like half of the people on Earth. And yes, they should have been equal since birth.
We believe that students should leave university believing in, striving for, and expecting societies of true equality.
And part of this liberation movement requires that we call out and break down these social norms and barriers to our well-being so that we may all be free to be our true selves. There's power in embracing everything we feel. These traits don't make us a man or a woman. They make us human. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Lincoln Center. We are just thrilled to have you. I am Jill Kaplan, founder and chair of the Women's Leadership Council of Lincoln Center Corporate Fund. And in my day life, I'm also the vice president and publisher of Crane's New York Business. And then the job that really keeps me very occupied is the mom of 2 teenage girls. So on behalf of Lincoln Center, I am incredibly honored for the kickoff of HeForShe Arts Week 2017. And I thank you very much for joining us at the, a little biased, but incredibly spectacular and beautiful David Rubenstein Atrium. We're thrilled to be partnering with UN Women, especially today, the kickoff for International Women's Day, to put a spotlight on gender equality and the power of the arts to create social change. Here at Lincoln Center, we know that the voices of artists and, by extension, arts organizations play a crucial role in sparking and shaping the increasingly urgent conversations about who we are as a society and who we want to be, locally, nationally, and internationally. Artists celebrate our triumphs, but they also illuminate our shortcomings. They stretch our imaginations. They investigate, analyze, and challenge what others take for granted, including some of the most ingrained societal norms. As visionaries, they literally see the future, or multiple possible futures, and guide us into being the best and brightest versions of ourselves. And most of all, they inspire us to get to work right-sizing the wrong and putting a spotlight on societal inequities, and the work that remains to be done to truly achieve an equitable society in which women and girls are afforded the same economic and creative opportunity as men and boys is real. In 2017, and I have to just, I hope these numbers were amazing to me. It is still not equal pay for equal work. And while I know this, to hear these statistics was quite, frankly, stunning and somewhat shocking anywhere in the world. For women of color, the pay gap is especially acute. According to the World Economic Forum's 2016 November report, the United States ranks 45th in the world in terms of gender equality, with a pay gap of 27.8%. And within the United States, according to the Institute of Women's Policy Research, wages for Black and Hispanic women are actually going down. That trend, if it continues, will take 108 years and 232 years, respectively, for each of these groups to achieve parity. Addressing this injustice requires action on all fronts, from business leaders, political figures, international non-governmental organizations, local cultural organizations, and yes, artists. You'll hear this morning from our very own First Lady of our wonderful city, Charlene McRae, who is the co-chair of the city's Commission on Gender Equality and who has spoken out again to support legislation that will help close the pay gap for municipal employees. You'll also hear from the Prime Minister of Iceland, a country that is ranked #1 in its efforts to closing the pay gap, with the goal of eliminating the gap for all citizens by 2022. I have to applaud that. I think that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. As part of its commitment to HeForShe. And you'll also hear from Grace McLean, a singer, writer, teacher, and actress currently appearing on Broadway in Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812, who has recently received Lincoln Center's Emerging Artist Hunt Family Award. Congratulations and thank you. To be frank, equal pay for equal work is or should be just our starting point. Ensuring equality is also ensuring access. Access to mentors who can support and advise young women and girls, access to new jobs and opportunities through networking channels, access to technology and resources required to create and promote one's own work. How does a child who dreams of becoming a professional drummer play her first downbeat? access to an instrument, a teacher, lessons, and to other network of girls and women who show her it's possible, that anything you want, anything that you dream for can be true. And let's not forget that that access includes being exposed to the arts, or science, or math, or coding, to nurture and feed that dream in the first place. One of the things that makes me so unbelievably proud to be a part of the Lincoln Center community is the fact that we are 100% committed to access for all audiences through free and diverse programming every week right here in this gorgeous atrium, through our community outreach programs throughout the 5 boroughs. We love all children, all 5 boroughs, led by Lincoln Center Education, and through live streams and other initiatives. And today, to be here with all of you in honor of International Women's Day and for the HeForShe initiative feels like a natural extension of our work and commitment. We are here because we know that the arts have the power to change, and we are here to start the conversation. And it is now my great honor to introduce our wonderful First Lady of New York City, Charlene McRae. Please welcome me.
Thank you, Jill. Isn't she just the kind of leader we need more of? Please, right? I love her energy. Love her energy. It'd be so great if we could clone her. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Happy International Women's Day. Yeah. And happy HeForShe Week. This celebration brings together 2 powerful forces in my life, and I know that's true for many of you as well. I mean, what would our lives be like without art? Can you imagine? I can't. Last Monday, I attended a reading of For Girls Who Have Considered Suicide, When the Rainbow Is Enough. It was organized at the Public Theater under the leadership of Oscar Eustis, the legendary Oscar, who's sitting right here with us today, who is also an exemplary HeForShe. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, For Colored Girls is a groundbreaking, heartbreaking choreo poem, a blend of theater, poetry, music, and dance created 40 years ago by Ntozake Shange. It gives voice to the stories of 7 women of color and their struggles. And I was fortunate to see it back in the 70s when the concept of a choreo poem was very new and radical. This tremendously personal creation, born of one girl's trials and triumphs, had such a huge influence on me and a whole generation of women. So we've made some progress. Oops. It helped all the colored girls visible to a world that shunned and demeaned us. And For Colored Girls has lost none of its power. After the show ended, every face I saw was lit with the glow and power of possibility. Many of those faces belong to men. To HeForShe, for HeForShe's is really hard to say, isn't it? HeForShe, which I can say was definitely not the case 40 years ago. And so we've made some progress from back then to now. More people than ever, and more men than ever, are realizing that we should all be feminists, because we all have a role to play in overcoming the obstacles that prevent half of the world's population from living their best lives and contributing their perspective and talent to making our world a better place. Now, the administration I represent is doing everything in its power to harness all of the artistic feminist energy and inspiration created this week and every day, and channel it into tangible and lasting change. For example, we're working with city agencies to create public lactation rooms. We're working to close the pay gap. We're working to keep all of our public spaces free from sexual harassment as the first U.S. city to join the United Nations Safe Cities Global Initiative. And with our NYC Task Force on Domestic Violence, we're working to provide pathways to safety for survivors while leading the charge to hold abusers accountable. because this is not only a women's issue, it's a human issue. And art is the most powerful messenger. That's why HeForShe Week is so important. We need men and women, actors, writers, painters, and everyone really to make the kind of change we're talking about. Over the next 7 days in 8 countries on 4 continents, some of the world's most talented performers will harness the power of the arts to push this movement forward. And I encourage New Yorkers, I encourage everyone to check out the calendar and experience as much of this as you can. You'll be supporting the arts and you'll be pumping energy into the heart of this movement, the movement to create the 50-50 world that we all deserve. It is now my great pleasure to introduce someone I am honored to count as an ally and a good friend. Madam Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka is the Executive Director of UN Women and a crusading champion of the arts. Her lifelong commitment for this work is courageous and contagious, as you're about to experience. Madam Phumzile, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, First Lady, for those kind and warm words. I also welcome all of you to this wonderful week, and thank the panelists who are here to speak to us. Prime Minister, welcome to New York. We look forward to hear from you, and of course, yourself, Edgar. We also are so thankful that we can call this place home because we have a brother here who looks after the interests of HeForShe and helps us to advocate for gender equality. So it is my pleasure to open the second annual Arts Week, which is now becoming one of the to-go-to places during International Women's Day, but also soon to be International Women's Month, if things go our way. I thank the distinguished guests who are here today, who will be participating in these activities. We have another big day at the UN that I will be rushing to participate in. But even more exciting, there are 7 additional cities who are celebrating Arts Week: London, Paris, Madrid, Bangkok, Santiago de Chile, Sao Paulo, and Panama City. Thank you, New York. You've led the pack and you've inspired this city. And of course, New York Arts Week has grown from 30 participating arts organizations last year to 60 arts organizations around the city this year. So you will have no excuse not to sample some of the action in the city. Last year's important question during the similar week was on the question of identity, something that we know something about and is very important. With the support and the help of the social media, we were able to take the discussion beyond the walls of the venue where we launched the Arts Week last year. We're hoping that you will repeat this again. Whatever will be discussed here mustn't stay here. This is one time. What happens here doesn't stay here. You can take it as far as you want it to go. And of course, the theme for International Women's Day this year, as well as for the Commission of the Status of Women, which we will be participating in for the next 2 weeks, touches on the issue of women and the world of work. How work can work for women. Because right now, work doesn't work for women. The fact that women are paid 24% less than men is a problem because you go to work to get paid. The fact that women are dealing with a glass ceiling is a problem because it means that women's upward mobility is compromised. The fact that women have to worry about sexual harassment at work is a problem. And the fact that the majority of the women are at the bottom of the pyramid, where they are underpaid and have lots of prospects to relapse down into poverty. So We are hoping that by the end of the next coming weeks, where we will be discussing this theme, we will come with some bright ideas for member states, for civil society, for women, for private sector, so that by 2030, we will be in a different place. And of course, in the arts itself, we also have challenges. Those challenges have to do with the stereotypes and norms which you are in the world of work, because the arts also represent a world of work. We also want to challenge the biases there that impact on women. The fact that only 70% of directors in film are women, only 31% of speaking roles are for women. I mean, really? I mean, we can talk, excuse me. 31% is not enough. And of course, it means that there's less work for women also because of that. And of course, only 5% of artwork on major museum walls in the US are by women artists, yet 51% of visual artists working today are women. So all of us have work to do. All of us can do something about stereotypes, and all of us can contribute to the cause for gender equality, because the cause for gender equality is broke. We need resources to power and to resource the work. And some of our innovative people have brought here today something that will be moving around, something that you could dip a credit card in with a smile preferably and a selfie, and the rest takes care of itself. So enjoy Arts Week, and we hope to bump into you somewhere around the city. We will be participating in the Arts Week. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Wow. It is a true honor to be here at Lincoln Center, which feels kind of like a second home to me now. And to be a part of this celebration representing the voice of the artist, all artists in general, and female artists in particular, is especially exciting. To start with, I would like to ask you to think about the last artistic experience you had. At the theater, in a museum gallery, a movie theater, at the opera, a jazz club, a ballet, or even at a child's piano recital. And try to recall the feeling that likely snuck up on you as you sat or danced, transfixed and transported into a world that someone else was creating. Suddenly your grocery list fades out, your email inbox disappears, and even the incessant chatter of your social media feed goes quiet. This is what it means to have an artistic experience. To lose yourself and find yourself at the same time. To feel even just for a moment that you understand something truly and deeply and differently than you have before. And when it's over, you leave the performance transformed. This is the space we work in as artists. We change minds from the inside. We sing our hearts out and leave everything on stage, all in the service of the submersion, the understanding, the transformation. Knowing how vital the arts are in terms of shaping society's vision, molding its ethos, and stretching the boundaries of what is considered normal, the question we ask ourselves this morning as part of HeForShe Arts Week is, how can we make sure that space, the space in which artists work, is inclusive? How do we ensure that women's voices and experiences are represented, heard, supported, rewarded, and celebrated? At the most fundamental level, we do it by guaranteeing that women as artists receive equal treatment and recognition. This means not only being presented with the same opportunities to write, direct, and perform as our male counterparts, but earning the same salaries as well. This is not special treatment, this is equal treatment. I am one of the lucky ones, coming from a family who supported the arts as part of my education from an early age. I came to New York for the first time to do a summer high school program through the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU, and I had the thrill of experiencing so many different kinds of storytelling, from the physical theater of De La Guardia to Shakespeare in the Park, from the camp of Bat Boy to the Pinter Festival here at Lincoln Center. There are many ways to tell a story, and I saw the importance of giving voice to the breadth and diversity of our experiences. I eventually came to New York to study drama at NYU, but I also turned my eye toward art history. I have found that studying a culture's art is the best way to learn about its history, from tracing the influence of style among the different states of medieval Europe to the reactionary movements of Cubism and Futurism. Artists have always reflected the times they live in, and they are often the ones who have led the way in terms of shifting cultural attitudes and ideas. It is therefore essential to understand our artistic past in order to more fully comprehend and reflect our present. So while I was studying medieval art at NYU, I discovered the 12th century mystic Hildegard von Bingen, about whom I'm now writing a musical which has been commissioned by LCT3. Pretty cool. Hildegard's art stood out from her contemporaries as something intensely personal and urgent. And this sentiment is expressed in her work as a composer, a poet, and author of the first morality play, predating others by a century. She is an anomaly, not only because of the amount of work she produced in her lifetime: 3 books of visionary theology, 69 liturgical compositions, 2 books of scientific and medical theory, hundreds of letters to popes and kings, abbots and abbesses, and an invented language, nor because of its singular and individualistic tone, nor that it is attributed to her, because most artistic works produced at that time did not bear the name of the author. She is an anomaly because she is a woman whose name we know 900 years later. How many more Hildegards have there been throughout history whose names have been obscured or co-opted, marginalized or erased, or who simply did not have the opportunity to express their unique talents? And this is where the mission and goals of HeForShe and the role of the art world intersect in a critical way. Because gender equity is not just about what happens in corporate boardrooms or government offices, although it is certainly about that, but it is also about what happens in music schools, in auditions, on television screens, in casting calls, in novels, and on stages of all sizes all around the world. As an artist, I believe that part of my role is to help push past people's preconceptions and show them something unexpected or new, or at least to help them see something familiar in a new way. But I am just one of a multitude of artists, regardless of gender, whose voice can help do that. And that is why it's so important for the doors to this career path to be open to a true diversity of artists, regardless of gender. So the example of Hildegard von Bingen demonstrates how much we gain by inclusion, and by extension, how much we stand to lose without it. Thank you.
I believe you're here. Good morning, everyone. What a wonderful beginning to this event. In the box is the surprise for later. It's such a pleasure and a privilege, really, to be the one to moderate this conversation between 3 he's who are working globally for she's. And each of them represents a very powerful platform that they have chosen to use to advocate for gender equality. I'm going to begin with the Prime Minister, His Excellency from Iceland. There are so many ways in which government can impact gender equality, Prime Minister, and you sit in the top position in the top country in the world in terms of gender equality. Yes. So many times when things are said they can't be done, Iceland is always the example of, well, yes, it can. And we're going to talk about one of those very specifically with the Prime Minister. But can you talk to us about how you think about your job, its huge sphere of influence, and the ability you have to use that to promote women and gender equality?
Yes, of course, I have my mic here. I was going to get yours. So, thank you. Let me first start by saying I am very much inspired by the HeForShe Art Week, and it's an honor to be here participating. And let me also say, yes, we may rank #1 in the world at the moment, but the job is not done still. Just a few months ago, we had elections in Iceland, and gender equality is still on the political agenda. It is one of the most important agendas still. So we don't feel like we've reached an end goal in any means, but we are proud of what we have already achieved. So there are so many ways in which we can continue to move forward. Gender budgeting is one issue which I worked with when I was finance minister last election period. So we are kind of intervening the thought of gender equality into all acts. New rules on legislative preparation to make sure that gender equality is one of the aspects we look into when proposals for new acts are considered for Parliament. We've also introduced quotas. Legislation can help. It can work as a helpful tool. And at the moment, what we are especially looking at is exactly a point which was made here earlier, which is equal pay. And we are considering law to push for that, so that larger companies in Iceland are obliged to show that they fulfill the standard which can ensure equal pay.
Mr. Prime Minister, can I just follow that point a bit? Because he's a global champion for HeForShe, and as a global champion, you make a commitment, a very large commitment, and in this case it was to bring Iceland to equal pay for equal work, I think by the year 2020. Now, that is generally one of the areas that you hear business say, we can't possibly do it on that timeline. It's way too many barriers. So what are the processes that you will, from your position, put in place that makes that possible?
So what we are considering at the moment is to come up with an equal pay standard, so that all companies that have more than 25 employees will have to go through the process of checking whether equal pay is exercised within the company. So there is a standard which we have already taken up, but not all are following it. So they will get a certification. So it is actually legalizing the need for certifying every third year that you've gone through the process to make sure that same pay is paid for same work.
So it's not just once, you have to be recertified every 3 years.
Yeah.
So Oscar Eustace, as the executive director of the Public Theater, is one of the great figures of the arts and culture in this city, and has had a profound difference way beyond the boundaries of New York City. And Oscar, as someone who looks at the arts landscape, and we've already heard what an important influence it is in terms of the stories we see represent for us what we can be and what we aspire to be. How does that come into your thinking as you select plays, as you look for artists?
Thank you. It's a huge issue, and I want to point out something that was a very important moment for me about 5 years ago, because we're an artistic organization, and as an artistic organization, I resist the idea of quotas, because each individual work of art is so specific and so individual that I resisted the idea that somehow we were supposed to have actual numerical standards. However, metrics are useful. And 5 years ago, we did an in-depth analysis of the gender of the playwrights and the directors, the leaders of the teams that we were employing. And I was shocked at how bad our numbers were. I realized that, like a lot of other people, I was complacent about running a progressive organization that was giving voice to all, and I was fooling myself about how really equal we were. And we've made a concerted effort since then to do, I think, the two things that as storytellers we're most required to do. First is make sure that we have women on stage representing not only themselves, but standing in for all of humanity. Women are not a special interest. Women are all of us. And so, for instance, right now, we've just transferred to Broadway Lynn Nottage's brilliant play, Sweat, which is about the deindustrialization of a steel town, Reading, Pennsylvania. A subject which you would immediately think, that sounds very masculine. But there are two female steelworkers who are at the center of this play, one African American, one Caucasian. And the play changes entirely because of that. So we've had to we've been inspired to make a much more conscious effort to make sure that not only are women represented on stage, but behind the scenes, that women are the writers, the voices, the directors of our work. And I have to say, like the Prime Minister, our job is not done. I'm not satisfied yet, but it's in my head now in a way it never would have been if we hadn't done that metrical analysis.
Well, data does matter.
Yeah.
And numbers matter. And Madame Fumsili reminded us that numbers, when it comes to representation in film and in all media, are really still far from equal.
That's right.
And while I understand the reluctance to put quotas on something like the Public Theater or any arts organization, how much does it play in your mind, though, Oscar, as you are looking at a year's schedule and you're deciding on the plays, choosing a Lynn Nottage over others, for example?
It's in my mind constantly, and I did a little, I don't know, a challenge to myself, which I said, okay, if I'm not going to do quotas, what I'm going to do is 2 or 3 months before we announce our season, I'm going to invite in two of the strongest feminists I know, Lisa Crone and Madeline George, two great playwrights, and I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to explain my season to them and why my season is composed the way it is, and I'm going to listen to whatever they have to say. The beautiful thing about that is that means Lisa Crone is in my head all year long. Every moment I'm going to have to explain this to Lisa, who, you know, I think is one of the smartest people I know, as well as a great artist. And that's been tremendously helpful in just readjusting my point of view. And the other thing I just want to say that's very important is, of course, who sits in my chair matters. And we have only very briefly ever had a woman at the head of the Public Theater. And it's part of my job to make sure that I am training candidates to succeed me who represent the full diversity of this country. So that means women and people of color, and I need to make sure that when I step down, I will have left a field of trained, qualified people to compete for my job who are as diverse as the city itself.
Is that a promise?
It's a promise.
Thank you, Oscar, for the good work and for keeping that in mind. Lisa is definitely a good person to have in your head and in your ear. So last year, Edgar Ramirez spoke at the HeForShe event, and was an extraordinary moment when you stepped forward as an advocate for HeForShe and talked about your own journey as a man to this position. And you, like others in this room, have access and power within the sphere of media that can make a very big difference. How do you take that narrative that you spoke about last year and apply it to your choices?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much. I feel very honored to be here this morning, to be included in this group. Well, basically, the reason why I so gladly accepted the invitation on behalf of Fumsili and the whole team at UN Women and HeForShe was the opportunity to, because that's pretty much what we artists do. We question norms and we question structures and rules, and basically my experience as an actor has allowed me to explore human nature and the extent of human nature. And that's where I found a connection to the message that HeForShe promotes around the world, because we're not one thing or another, we're many things at the same time. I mean, we are darkness and we're light, we are good and we're bad, we're strong and we're weak, all the time, at the same time sometimes, and in different moments of our lives. So there has been a misconception about what gender equality is. I mean, many people tend to think that it's about women, but actually gender equality is a liberation movement for all genders. And my contribution hand to hand with Buncelo and her team, it's to let the other half, like other men, other guys, to reconsider and to explore and question our own masculinity.
Well, that was the question that always comes up. How does a man confront the stereotypes of masculinity that are seen throughout media, prevalent as the way in which we look at a man, define a man? So how did you find your own way to a new definition of masculinity in this universe in which there's one such dominant one?
Well, I think that arts and my craft as an actor has allowed me to reconsider societal positions on masculinity. I mean, normally feeling and being conscious of your feelings is considered to be weak, and historically, weakness has been associated to the feminine. So basically, when you reject sensitivity, in a way, you're rejecting the feminine, and that's where the stereotypes start. And basically, what makes us human, and that was the question. That was the main question. That was the center of my contribution last year when I spoke at the UN at the second anniversary of HeForShe. What does it mean to be human? I mean, what makes us human, and what unifies us all is the ability to feel and to feel deeply. But if we live in a society at large that condemns feelings, then we don't have the opportunity to express ourselves. And arts lend themselves to be a window and a platform to express ourselves and to define who we are. So basically, my invitation is to be proud of our feelings, to feel deeply, because that's exactly what is going to allow. For example, if we men, if we feel frustrated because we are, according to the patriarchal mandate, we need to be successful, we need to have money, we need to win, we need to be number one in everything we do. We need to have a lot of women, we need to be ready to sex, we need to do all these things all the time, because that's what is expected at large from us. If we, of course, and that's setting us up for failure, because nobody can be number one in every single thing. And that frustration, if that frustration is channeled inward, if it doesn't have evolved a way to express itself in a positive manner, and if it goes inward, then it goes in the way of depression and suicide. I mean, we know, the data, as we were speaking earlier, is very precise, and actually is very alarming. Or how the issue of male suicide and male mental health, it's a taboo. Nobody speaks about it, and if it goes outward, then it becomes violent. So, if we consider by this mandate, this patriarchal mandate, that women are an appendix, and they are in a way our property, so where does this violence gonna end up at the first place? I mean, when the rules are blurred, when there's chaos, the first rights that are violated are women's and girls' rights. So basically, what we're trying to do through HeForShe and what I'm trying to do as a contribution is to speak openly about feelings, and that we men, boys can cry and boys should cry, and that's pretty much what we've been focused on. In try to invite men to allow themselves to feel, and not feel that pressure, because in the end, all this patriarchal mandate is affecting us all.
And the flip side of changing that narrative around what it means to be a man is that there has been an increase in the amount of violence against women and girls in every country, at the same time that there have been movements toward gender equity. Part of the way we change that are the stories we tell, and part of the way we change that is the way we live our own lives. And Mr. Prime Minister, I've read about you that you do some rather unusual things and it's sad that it's unusual, but it's unusual because we don't usually think of a Prime Minister doing some of the work, or not just a Prime Minister, a man. In any position. So talk to us about that, how you take this way that you feel about gender equity and women into your personal life, your family life, the way that you're modeling it for your children, as well as your country.
Are we going to get to the secret here?
We could.
I see. So, what you see here are pink hands. It's not because I have removed my nail polish pink. It's because of something I like doing, and I did last night, which was baking a cake. And this was from the color dyeing for the sugar mass. So I was gonna ask Elizabeth to come up here and take delivery of the cake I did yesterday. I can hardly say it's a contribution for Art Week, but still it's a creative something.
Well, I particularly love the color of the icing, and it does show up on your hands.
Yeah, it took some time
I
to.
thought maybe you were wearing nail polish.
Yeah.
But
that's not the thing I do, but I like baking cakes. Or maybe I shouldn't say. Maybe the best description is I like decorating cakes. Okay.
Oh. Well, we're going to share this cake, not right this moment, but in just a few minutes, and then we can all talk about how good is he at baking the cake. But that's that, and this is seriously an important step forward. Yeah, yes. Would you like to take it from Silly?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're going to take it, but you promise not to disappear with it. We said we would share it.
Yes, this cake has to be shared. It's too good to eat. I know people are looking for selfies. Oh, pictures, not selfies, huh? Thank you so much, Prime Minister.
Well, it's my pleasure. I really did enjoy it.
I think for the picture, we ought to have you stand with the cake that you baked, Mr. Prime Minister.
So.
This is unpaid care work.
Yes.
So I'm going to come back to ask you a bit more about the other activities that are a part of your personal life, and the way in which you carry this image of yourself and what it means to be a man as a father and as a husband into your personal life.
Well, let me just say that I can very much relate to what Edgar was just saying here on just being yourself and not being afraid of your feelings and taking part in your children's activities and lives. You know, one of the things I do like about what is happening in Iceland is has to do with young girls. And you know, when I was growing up, I did play soccer and all other sorts of sports, but it was very unusual for women to play soccer, and this has changed a lot. So there are, in my small municipality, big groups of girls that do play sport, and they have to experience that we do support it and we show up. And in just a matter of, let's say, 1 or 2 decades, we've seen complete transformation where all fathers, they do take part. We do travel with them to take part in competitions and so on. So I think it's just, at the end of the day, it's just about what was said earlier. It's about not being afraid of your feelings and expressing them, and being a politician. Sometimes it is expected that you are the hard type.
You have to win. Well,
yes. Well, I like winning. I like winning. I have to admit. But it's about also showing that you're a human being, and at the end of the day, that's the best way to relate to the people you're trying to get a message across to.
And the press in Iceland, it'll be okay to have this picture of you and from Silly and the cake.
Yeah, for sure.
It won't be good. But Oscar, stories are the way that we define ourselves and the way we define others. Yes, and it's a reason that what we see in on stage and film has such powerful impact on us. Those are the narratives we believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how much have you seen that change in terms of the kinds of stories that come now to the public to go on stage? Are they helping us move toward gender equity?
We're trying, and we're having some real successes. I'm very proud of the fact that last year we moved our production of Eclipsed to Broadway, which was the first time that a show that was entirely cast and led by African women has appeared on Broadway. And we open Eclipse tomorrow night in San Francisco, which I'm very happy about too. But not enough, not enough. When we did this wonderful music Fun Home that Lisa Crone wrote the book, Janine Tesori wrote the music, and Alison Bechdel wrote the underlying book for it. And I learned about the Bechdel test, which I'm sure all of you know, which I didn't know at the time, which is don't see a movie if it doesn't have more than one woman in it, if the two women don't have a scene where they talk together, and if what they talk about isn't only men. And you start applying that, and it is staggering how many movies you can't watch. It is just, it really is, it's a beautiful, simple test. But I want to say one thing about Fun Home, because this is a little geeky, so forgive me those of you who have no interest in the theater. But in the musical theater, the traditional structure is near the beginning, there's something called an I want song, where the protagonist announces what he or she wants, and then the rest of the musical is pursuing that objective to the end. What Lisa Crone did in making Fun Home into a musical is she replaced the traditional I want song with the song that the entire family sings about the father, which is actually entitled He Wants, them adjusting to what he wants. And she's doing it, this brilliantly subversive thing by doing that, which is on the one hand, she's pointing out that all of these women and children are forced to live in reaction to what the male protagonist desires, what he's pursuing, and making that trying to live in reaction the actual story of the show. So these women become the protagonists, become the subjects of the story, not the objects of the story. And as a result, among other things, you end up with a collective protagonist. You end up with a protagonist that isn't one person, but is the family as a whole. And that's the way that I look at that and I go, that is genius dramaturgy. That is feminist dramaturgy that has something to teach all of us precisely about saying life is not about one person pursuing their goal. Life is about how groups work together and succeed or fail together.
Would you remind us what that test is again? That's such a good takeaway.
The Bechdel test, which Alison Bechdel created, and it is to ask of every movie or play, does it have more than one woman in it? Do two women have a scene together? And do they talk about anything other than men in that scene?
It's amazing how many movies that will eliminate.
It's just, and it is eye-opening when you go in and you watch movies or theater or any other story with that lens in front of you. Again, it reveals the biases that we're not aware of. And that's when you say we're always trying to push boundaries, that's one of the things that we have to do as artists is reflect back to us ourselves and make us go, oh my God, I didn't realize that was who I am. I didn't realize those were my assumptions. And then things can start to change.
So as an artist, do you have a test or a set of requirements when you're looking at a script? I won't do this and I will do that?
Well, I try not to be political about my choices as an artist, but definitely there's certain contexts where I don't feel comfortable, and for me it's very difficult to at this stage of my life to play a character that would be a women's abuser, for example. It would be very hard for me to play it. So I know that in love stories, and especially the good ones, there are things that happen within, this is within love and the relationship. But to get to physical abuse, to psychological abuse, it is something that I feel uncomfortable. I try not to. I think that in the end, the choices that you make as an actor is like a secret dance between us and our characters, and I haven't really figured out whether they chase us or we chase them. And I think that in the end, there's probably an subconscious discourse that we're building from one character to another. I mean, I try to make it always as emotional as possible. That's why I try to set my own politics as a person aside. But definitely, I will gravitate towards what makes me feel comfortable and challenged at the same time. However, in life, I remember I talked to Elizabeth about this before I had I had the opportunity to speak at the second anniversary of HeForShe. What I try to do is, there's an exercise that really works when we want to measure the gender inequality in situations. It's just change the gender of any situation, and then you'll see if a situation of inequality is going on. I remember 2 years ago I was spending vacations with my family on the beach. It was in Mexico, and it's my mom, my dad, my sister, and she has 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. So the oldest boy is 50 years old, the youngest boy is 4 years old, and the girl is 7 years old. So we're there by the beach. We're sitting in our seats, and we're reading and talking, and then suddenly the little girl, Maria Camila, she doesn't like sand. I mean, she doesn't like it. And then from time to time, she would go to the water, just clean the sand, and then come back. So there was a moment that she did that. She came back, and the little boy, the 4-year-old, had moved from his seat to her seat and sat there. Then when she came back, she said, "Well, that's my seat." And then he didn't want to stand up. And then again, she protested, "That's my seat." No, he didn't stand up. And then suddenly my sister, and I think that my dad said, "Don't worry, you're older than him, just sit over there." And she protested, but she okay, she sat over there. Later on, I looked up, but I kept reading. And then later on, she goes back to the beach, she cleans her hands, comes back, and now the 15-year-old is on her seat, sitting on her seat. And then she starts to protest a little bit stronger, like, "Hey, that's my seat, that's my seat." And nobody was paying attention. And then, "That's my seat, that's my seat." And then suddenly, nobody paid attention. Of course, he's older. He said, "Let's just shut up and go to the other seat." And then she goes to the corner, like next to a palm tree. She's not crying, but she's sobbing. She's really upset. And then suddenly, I look at that, I look at her, I look at them, I look at her. She's sobbing, and I said, "Okay, you stand up, you get up from your seat, you give your seat back to your sister, and family, we need to talk." Because clearly that's where the message, because we're all in this culture. I mean, actually, I think that the main goal of these gatherings and these campaigns and these conversations is for us to be conscious of the stronghold we're under. I mean, basically, we're all victims, and we're all raised in a patriarchal society, and I think that all the way from feminism to gender equality liberation movement is all about becoming conscious of this mandate, and how can we change the stereotypes and the constraints that are imposed on us. And then I talked to my family, and I said, this is where it starts. I mean, this is where the seed is planted for that little girl to feel she's different and she's inferior to her male sibling. So basically, the message that we're sending to a 7-year-old is that you're weaker, you're inferior, and you have to serve to the male privilege. And that was very revelatory to me. And then a few months later, Elizabeth and Puncelli invited me to be part of HeForShe, and I shared this anecdote
You're
to them.
starting it early on. So one final question, Mr. Prime Minister. The concept that is applied in art often, as Edgar said, is just change the pronoun and make the character she instead of he and see if it works. I think of Iceland as a country that's changed the pronoun. You know, you were the first country to say she about the president of a country, the first country to elect a female president, and you've done that over and over again, sort of broken that barrier of where he and she, you know, could be interchanged. So how do you think of yourself and the legacy that will come from your office? How will you be? How do you want people to think about your time and the top leadership position?
No pressure.
Yeah, well, you know, one way to think about it is to say, when the day comes that you can say that you don't notice that it is an issue. A woman is the PM, or chairing parliament, or again elected the president. That's the day when we've achieved something. And you mentioned the first elected president, which we had in Vigdís Finnbogadóttir. And I think it is important because role models, they really do matter. And we have had some very strong role models, and she was definitely one of them, an icebreaker. We've also had women's political parties even, and we're almost to equal representation in parliament. I think it's around 48, 52, or just about. Looking back, I hope I can say I was a role model for change, for continuing the fight for equality, and taking part in the HeForShe campaign makes me proud, and I am honored to be here serving as a champion.
And thank you for your good work. I hope you'll join me in thanking three men who represent, three different ways in which change is coming about because of a campaign like HeForShe, an artist who makes his individual choices differently now, an artistic director who has the collective impact of audiences, and of course a prime minister who can put policy into place. So would you join me in thanking these he's who are fighting for women all over the world. And now we're going to enjoy the prime minister's cake. I don't know who's going to cut it or distribute it, but that's been offered. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to meet you.
Very good
Nice
to see you.
to see you.
Thank you so much.